Marcus Chen had always been told he was too stubborn for his own good. Standing in the cramped cargo bay of the salvage ship Wanderer, watching purple blood pool around the broken alien restraints, he wondered if his grandmother had been right all along. The distress signal had come through 3 hours ago, while he was alone on a routine debris collection run near the Kepler station. Standard protocol said to report unknown signals to Colonial Defense, but something about the transmission made him hesitate. It wasn't just the obvious pain in the alien voice, or even the fact that she was speaking perfect English despite clearly not being human. It was the way she said, "Please," that got to him. Now he was looking at her, and Marcus realized he was way out of his depth. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that shifted between deep blue and silver depending on how the light hit it. Her hair moved like liquid mercury, and her eyes were the color of distant stars. But it was the chains around her wrists and ankles that made his jaw clench. The metal looked wrong, somehow hungry, and where it touched her skin, it left angry welts that seemed to pulse with their own dark energy. "You came," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air shimmer. "I did not think anyone would answer." Marcus knelt beside her, careful not to touch the chains. "What's your name?" "I am Zarathiel of the 7th House of Velthara." She tried to sit up and winced. "Though I suspect my father has already erased me from the family records." "Your father did this?" Her laugh was bitter. "Not directly. He simply sold me to the Dominion as payment for a trade dispute. They were taking me to their breeding facilities when their ship suffered engine failure." The casual way she said breeding facilities made Marcus's stomach turn. He'd heard rumors about the Dominion, a collection of species that treated other sentient beings like livestock. The Colonial Defense Force had strict orders to avoid contact with them, which was why no one would have responded to her signal through official channels. "The crew abandoned ship when the reactor started failing," Zara continued. "They left me chained in the cargo hold to die with their ship." Marcus examined the restraints more closely. They seemed to be made of some kind of living metal that actually grew into her skin. Every few seconds, they pulsed with dark energy, and he could see her strength visibly drain away. "These aren't just chains," he realized. "They're feeding on you." "Biodrains," she confirmed weakly. "They will continue to consume my life force until there is nothing left. Perhaps another day, maybe less." Marcus had seen a lot of ugly things in his 5 years working salvage. But this was different. This was deliberate cruelty designed to cause maximum suffering. He thought about his grandmother again, how she'd always said that a person's character was defined by what they did when no one was watching. "I'm going to get you out of these," he said. Zara's eyes widened. "You cannot. Biodrains can only be removed by the one who placed them, or by destroying the control matrix. And the matrix is—" She gestured weakly toward her chest, where a small device was embedded just below her collarbone. The removal process would require someone to voluntarily share their life force to power the release mechanism. It would likely kill any human. Likely isn't the same as definitely. "You do not understand. I am not worth your life. I am nothing, a disgraced princess sold into slavery. You should leave me and save yourself." Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Even chained and dying, there was something about her that commanded respect. Maybe it was the way she held her head high despite everything, or the fact that she was more concerned about his safety than her own impending death. "Here's what I understand," he said, pulling out his multi-tool. "You're a living being who doesn't deserve to die alone in a broken ship. Everything else is just details." He examined the control matrix, noting the biometric scanner and the series of what looked like injection ports. "How does it work exactly?" "The matrix requires genetic material and life force from a willing donor," Zara explained reluctantly. "Blood, specifically. It uses the donor's energy to power the release sequence, but the process is designed to drain everything. The Dominion created it as a failsafe to prevent escape. How much blood? All of it. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. What if the donor was really stubborn about staying alive? Despite her pain, Zara almost smiled. I do not think stubbornness factors into biological processes. You'd be surprised what humans can survive when we're too stubborn to die. He positioned his hand over the scanner. My name is Marcus Chen, by the way. Figured you should know who's helping you. Marcus, she repeated, and somehow his name sounded musical in her voice. Please reconsider. Your death will not save me if the process fails. Then we better make sure it doesn't fail. Before she could protest further, Marcus pressed his palm against the scanner. The device immediately came alive, extending several needle-like probes that pierced his skin. The pain was immediate and intense, like liquid fire flowing through his veins. The biodrains around Zara's limbs began to pulse faster, and Marcus could feel his strength being pulled away through the connection. The control matrix displayed a series of alien symbols that he couldn't read, but the meaning was clear enough. It was measuring his life force, calculating how much it could take. The process has begun, Zara said urgently. You can still disconnect. Marcus gritted his teeth as another wave of drain hit him. Not happening. The next few minutes were a blur of pain and determination. Marcus watched the readouts on the matrix, noting that while his life force was being drained rapidly, it wasn't quite as fast as the device expected. Human biology was apparently different enough from whatever species the biodrains were designed for that the calculations were slightly off. Zara was getting stronger as the chains began to loosen. Her skin started to return to its natural blue-silver color, and her eyes became brighter. But Marcus was fading fast. His vision was starting to blur, and his hands were shaking. Almost there, he muttered, though he wasn't sure if he was trying to reassure her or himself. Finally, with a sound like breaking glass, the biodrains fell away from Zara's limbs. She was free, but Marcus collapsed to the deck, his hand still connected to the matrix. The device was still draining him, apparently programmed to continue until its victim was completely consumed. Zara moved faster than anything that large should have been able to move. Her hand shot out and crushed the control matrix, severing the connection. Marcus gasped as the drain suddenly stopped, but the damage was done. He could barely lift his head. You saved me, Zara said, cradling his head gently in her hands. Good, Marcus whispered. Now we need to get out of here before this Rex reactor goes critical. Zara looked around the cargo bay as if seeing it clearly for the first time. This is not a Dominion vessel. It's my salvage ship. I picked up your distress call and came looking for survivors. You came alone? With no backup? Standard salvage protocol, Marcus said weakly, though I'm pretty sure I just violated about 6 different colonial defense regulations. Zara was quiet for a moment, and Marcus thought he saw something like wonder in her expression. Your people would risk punishment for helping strangers? Some of us would. The ones worth knowing anyway. She helped him to his feet, supporting most of his weight. Your ship is safe? Should be. I left it docked to your vessel's airlock. As they made their way slowly through the dying ship's corridors, Marcus couldn't help but notice how Zara moved. Even weakened from her ordeal, she had a natural grace that spoke of royal training. Her bearing was unmistakably noble, despite the rough condition of her clothes and the lingering marks from the bio-drains. Can I ask you something? Marcus said as they reached the airlock. Why were you speaking English in your distress call? Zara paused at the airlock controls. I have studied many languages. English seemed most likely to be understood by potential rescuers in this sector. She looked at him curiously. Why did you answer? Surely you knew the risks of responding to an unknown alien signal. Marcus thought about that as they crossed into his ship. The Wanderer was small and cluttered, nothing like the sleek Dominion vessel they were leaving behind, but it was home. He settled Zara into the co-pilot's seat and began the undocking sequence. "Honestly," he said, "I couldn't just leave someone to die alone. My grandmother always said that was the difference between being human and just being alive." "Your grandmother sounds wise." She was. She also would have had some very strong words about me nearly getting myself killed today. He engaged the engines and pulled away from the damaged ship just as its reactor finally gave out. The explosion lit up the debris field like a miniature star. Zara watched the destruction in the rear display. "They will notice the ship is gone when they return to salvage it." "Will that be a problem for you?" "The Dominion does not easily forget escaped property," she said quietly, "and my father will not welcome a daughter who has embarrassed the family by surviving." Marcus considered this as he set course for the nearest colonial defense station. "What if you didn't go back? I am a princess of Valthara. I have duties, responsibilities. You're also someone who was sold into slavery by her own father. Sometimes new circumstances call for new decisions." Zara was quiet for a long time, staring out at the stars. Finally, she spoke. "What would I do? I have no trade skills, no knowledge of human customs. I am trained for leadership and diplomacy, but who would trust an exiled alien princess?" "You'd be surprised. Humans have a pretty good track record of accepting people who prove themselves, and you've already proven you're worth saving." "How?" Marcus looked at her seriously. "Because when you thought I was dying to save you, your first instinct was to try to stop me, even though it meant staying enslaved. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." As they settled into the long journey to the station, Marcus found himself thinking that maybe his stubborn streak had finally gotten him into something worthwhile. He'd saved a life today, and possibly gained something he hadn't even known he was looking for. Behind them, the wreckage of the Dominion ship continued to burn in the void, and somewhere in the distance, forces were already beginning to move that would change both their lives forever. But for now, they were alive, they were free, and they were together in the vast darkness between the stars. The adventure was just beginning. 6 months after the rescue, Marcus was beginning to understand that helping an alien princess came with complications he'd never imagined. The Colonial Defense Station had been chaos when they'd arrived. Medical teams rushed Zara away while security officers peppered Marcus with questions about unauthorized contact with Dominion forces. He'd spent 3 days in detention before Admiral Sarah Reeves finally cleared him, though not without a stern warning about proper protocols. What surprised everyone was that Zara refused repatriation to her home world. When the Valtharan ambassador arrived 2 weeks later, she formally renounced her claim to the throne and requested asylum with the Colonial Federation. "She did what?" Marcus had asked Admiral Reeves when the news broke. "Apparently, she's decided that a society willing to sell their children into slavery isn't worth serving," the Admiral replied dryly. "Can't say I disagree with her logic." Now Zara was working as a cultural liaison for the Colonial Defense Force, helping to establish peaceful contact with species that had previously been hostile or unknown. Her royal education and natural diplomatic skills made her invaluable, and her unique perspective as someone who'd experienced the worst of galactic politics gave her credibility that human diplomats couldn't match. Marcus had gone back to salvage work, but he found himself stationed at the same facility where Zara worked. It wasn't exactly a coincidence. Admiral Reeves had offered him a permanent position as a civilian contractor specializing in rescue operations. The pay was better than freelance salvage, and it meant he could stay close to the one person who'd made his life feel like it had purpose beyond just surviving. They'd grown closer over the months, though both were careful to maintain appropriate boundaries. Zara was still technically a refugee under colonial protection, and Marcus didn't want to complicate her situation. But the connection between them was undeniable. They spent their off-duty hours together, talking about everything from human literature to Valtharan philosophy. It was during one of these conversations that the trouble started. "There's something I need to tell you," Zara said one evening as they sat in the observation lounge, watching ships come and go from the station. Marcus had learned to recognize that tone in her voice. It meant complications. "What kind of something?" "My father sent an envoy today. Officially, it was about finalizing trade agreements with the Colonial Federation. Unofficially," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "he wants me back." "I thought you renounced your claim to the throne." "I did, but apparently the political situation on Valthara has changed. My younger brother died in a hunting accident last month. My father needs an heir, and I am the only option remaining." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What did you tell the envoy?" "That my decision stands. I will not return to a society that treats people as property." Zara turned to look at him directly. "But there is more. My father has made it clear that if I do not return voluntarily, he will consider my refusal an act of war against the Valtharan Empire." "War? Over one person?" "Not just any person. A royal heir. In Valtharan culture, the bloodline is considered sacred. For me to refuse my duties while living under the protection of another government is seen as a profound insult." Marcus ran his hands through his hair. "So, what are the options?" "The Colonial Council will meet tomorrow to decide. They can either surrender me to prevent a war, or they can refuse and face the consequences. The Valtharan fleet is already massing at our borders. There has to be a third option." Zara smiled sadly. "You humans always look for another way. It is one of the things I admire most about your species." Before Marcus could respond, his communicator chimed with an emergency alert. Admiral Reeves's voice came through, crisp and urgent. "All senior staff to the command center immediately. We have a situation developing." The command center was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Holographic displays showed fleet movements near the Valtharan border, and the tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Admiral Reeves looked up as they entered. "Good, you're both here. We've just received word from the Dominion." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "What do they want?" "They've filed a formal claim for the return of stolen property." Reeves gestured to a display showing legal documents. "Specifically, Princess Zara Thiel, who they claim was legally purchased from the Valtharan government and therefore belongs to them." "That's insane," Marcus said. "She's not property." "According to Dominion law, she is. And according to their treaty with the Valtharans, the sale was completely legal." Zara's face had gone pale. "My father sold me twice, once to the Dominion, and now he wants me back to sell me again as a political alliance." "It gets worse," Admiral Reeves continued. "The Dominion has allied with Valthara for this action. If we don't surrender you, both governments have threatened military action against the Colonial Federation." The room fell silent. Marcus could see the weight of the decision crushing down on everyone present. The Colonial Federation was strong, but fighting a war on two fronts against established galactic powers would be devastating. "There is a fourth option," Zara said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "Challenge combat. According to both Valtharan and Dominion law, a claim of ownership can be disputed through trial by combat. If I have a champion who defeats their chosen representatives, my freedom must be legally recognized by both governments." "Absolutely not," Marcus said immediately. "It is the only way that does not result in massive bloodshed." Admiral Reeves leaned forward. "What would this combat entail?" "Single combat, to the death or surrender. Each side chooses one representative. The Dominion and Valthara would likely choose their best warriors. They will not expect the Colonial Federation to have anyone capable of matching them." "Because we don't." the Admiral said bluntly. Our best fighters are soldiers, not gladiators. We don't have anyone who could stand against trained combat specialists from warrior cultures. Marcus felt a familiar, stubborn determination settling in his chest. What if you did? Every eye in the room turned to him. Marcus? No, Zara said urgently. These will be professional killers, trained from birth in combat. You are a salvage operator. I'm a salvage operator who's too stubborn to die, remember? He looked around the room. Besides, do we really have any other choices? Either we fight this combat or we fight a war. At least this way, only one person has to risk their life. Admiral Reeves studied him carefully. You do realize you'd be facing aliens with enhanced strength, speed, and reflexes? Species that have been bred for warfare? I realize I'd be fighting for something worth dying for. Zara grabbed his arm. I cannot let you do this. I will not have another person sacrifice themselves for me. Marcus covered her hand with his own. It's not a sacrifice if I win. And I intend to win. How? With what advantages? With what training? With the same thing that kept me alive when those biodrains should have killed me. Pure human stubbornness. He looked around the room again. Besides, there's something these warrior cultures might not have considered. What's that? Admiral Reeves asked. Humans don't just fight to win. We fight to survive. And when we're fighting for something we love, we don't know how to quit. The word love hung in the air between them. Marcus hadn't meant to say it, but there it was. Zara's eyes widened, and he could see her struggling with emotions she wasn't ready to voice. The challenge must be issued formally, Admiral Reeves said after a long pause. Are you absolutely certain about this? Marcus looked at Zara one more time. She was everything noble and strong and worth protecting in the universe. I'm certain. Then God help us all. 3 days later, the challenge was accepted. The Dominion chose a Krillian warrior named Vextar, a 7-foot-tall reptilian killing machine with natural armor and enhanced reflexes. The Vile Therans selected Commander Thulmars, a genetically enhanced super soldier with centuries of combat experience. Marcus would face both of them in sequential combat on a neutral station. The rules were simple. Fight until death or surrender. No weapons except what the station provided. No assistance from outside forces. As the date approached, Marcus threw himself into preparation with the intensity that surprised even him. Admiral Reeves assigned him the station's best combat trainers, and he spent every waking hour learning to fight against opponents stronger and faster than himself. Zara was there for every training session, offering insights into alien combat psychology and tactics. She also insisted on teaching him some basic Valtharan mental techniques for pain management and focus. You realize this is insane, she said one evening as they sat in the medical bay treating his latest training injuries. Probably, Marcus agreed. But it's the right kind of insane. The right kind? The kind that might actually work. 2 nights before the combat, Zara found him in the observation lounge again, staring out at the stars. Unable to sleep? She asked, settling beside him. Thinking. About dying? About living? About what happens after I win? Zara was quiet for a long moment. And if you do not win? Marcus turned to look at her. Then at least I'll have tried. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, she said softly. Then so quietly he almost missed it. I love you too. Marcus felt his world shift. Zara, I needed you to know. Whatever happens tomorrow, I needed you to know that your life has meaning beyond just this fight. You have given me more than freedom. You have given me hope that there is goodness in the universe worth fighting for. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and preparing for a battle that would determine not just Zara's fate, but the future of peace between 3 galactic powers. Tomorrow, Marcus would step into an arena and face enemies designed to kill him. But tonight he was exactly where he wanted to be, with the person he was willing to die for sitting beside him. And that was enough. The universe was about to discover what happened when humans fought for love. The neutral station that hosted the combat trial was a massive structure built specifically for diplomatic meetings between hostile species. Its central arena could accommodate thousands of spectators while maintaining strict environmental controls for various alien physiologies. Marcus stood in the preparation chamber, checking his equipment one final time. The station had provided basic combat gear, lightweight armor that would stop claws but not crushing blows, and a selection of simple weapons. He'd chosen a shortened staff and a combat knife, tools that matched his training and natural reflexes. Through the chamber's viewport, he could see the arena filling with representatives from dozens of species. The outcome of this fight would determine more than just Zara's freedom. It would establish precedent for how the three major galactic powers dealt with individual rights versus state claims. Admiral Reeves entered the chamber, her expression grim. Final medical scan shows you're in peak condition. Heart rate elevated but stable. How are you feeling? Like I'm about to fight two of the galaxy's deadliest warriors for the right to keep the woman I love out of slavery, Marcus said, adjusting his armor straps. So, terrified but determined. Good. Terrified keeps you alive. Determined keeps you fighting when terrified wants to run. She handed him a small communication device. Emergency medical transport. If you need to surrender, activate this immediately. I won't need it. Everyone needs backup plans. Son. The arena doors opened, and Marcus walked into the most intimidating space he'd ever seen. The fighting area was a circle roughly 50 meters across, surrounded by energy barriers that rose 30 meters to the spectator levels. The floor was a neutral composite material that provided good traction without favoring any particular fighting style. Thousands of beings watched from the galleries above. He could see the Veltharan delegation in their ornate robes, the Dominion representatives in their dark armor, and the Colonial Federation officials in their crisp uniforms. In the front row of the human section, Zara sat with her hands clasped tightly, her face a mask of controlled fear. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena in multiple languages. The challenge combat will now commence. Representing the claimant forces, Commander Thul Mars of the Veltharan Empire and Warrior Vextar of the Dominion Collective. Representing the defendant, Marcus Chen of the Colonial Federation. Combat rules are as follows. Sequential single combat to death or surrender. No outside assistance. Victory requires defeating both opponents. Marcus's first opponent entered from the opposite side of the arena. Commander Thulmars was everything the briefings had described, and worse. Nearly 8 feet tall, with skin like burnished metal and 4 arms that moved with mechanical precision. Genetic engineering had given him enhanced muscle density, reinforced bones, and reflexes that were literally superhuman. He carried a traditional Valtharan war spear, its crystalline blade humming with energy. "Human!" Thulmars called across the arena, his voice carrying the authority of centuries of command. "You fight for a traitor who has dishonored her bloodline. Surrender now, and I will grant you a quick death." "Thanks for the offer," Marcus replied, settling into a defensive stance with his staff. "But I'm going to have to pass." The Valtharan commander moved like liquid lightning. One moment he was 30 meters away, the next he was driving his spear at Marcus's chest with enough force to punch through steel plating. Marcus barely managed to deflect the strike with his staff, the impact sending shockwaves up his arms. He rolled sideways as Thulmars followed up with a devastating combination attack, all 4 arms working in perfect coordination to create a web of deadly strikes. The first few minutes of the fight established the obvious. Thulmars was faster, stronger, and more skilled than Marcus in every measurable way. The Veltharan's war spear seemed to be everywhere at once, and it was all Marcus could do to avoid being skewered. But as the fight continued, Marcus began to notice patterns. Thulmars fought like exactly what he was, a perfectly trained military officer executing textbook combat maneuvers. Every attack followed established forms. Every combination flowed into the next with mechanical precision. Marcus, on the other hand, fought like someone who'd learned to survive in the chaotic, unpredictable environment of space salvage. When Thulmars expected him to retreat from a spear thrust, Marcus stepped inside the strike and used his staff to redirect the weapon's momentum. When the commander anticipated a defensive posture, Marcus suddenly shifted to offense, his knife appearing in his offhand to slash at the Veltheran's exposed flank. "You fight without honor!" Thulmars snarled as Marcus's blade scored a shallow cut across his ribs. "I fight to win," Marcus panted. "Different philosophy." The turning point came when Thulmars attempted a classic finishing move, a four-armed spinning attack that should have been impossible to counter. Instead of trying to block or dodge, Marcus did something completely illogical. He threw his staff directly at Thulmars's face and dove between the commander's legs. The Veltheran's perfect form faltered for just a moment as he instinctively flinched away from the thrown weapon. In that moment, Marcus rolled to his feet behind the commander and drove his knife into the gap where Thulmars's armor plates met at the back of his knee. The blade found the nerve cluster Marcus had been targeting, and the commander's left legs buckled. As Thulmars stumbled, Marcus retrieved his staff and delivered a precise strike to the base of the Veltheran's skull, right where the enhanced genetic modifications had left a small weak point. Commander Thulmars collapsed to the arena floor, unconscious but alive. The crowd erupted in surprised murmurs. A human had just defeated one of the galaxy's most feared warriors using nothing but cunning and the kind of dirty fighting that no military academy taught. Marcus stepped back, breathing hard. "Do you surrender?" Thulmars struggled to push himself up on his remaining functional arms. "I yield. The combat is yours, human." The arena fell silent as Vextar entered for the second fight. If Thulmars had been intimidating, the Dominion warrior was terrifying. Vextar was a Krillian, a species evolved from predators that had ruled their homeworld's oceans. His natural armor was thick enough to stop most projectile weapons, his claws could slice through steel, and his reflexes were adapted for hunting prey that moved faster than human eyes could follow. Unlike the disciplined Thulmars, Vextar moved with the fluid grace of a born killer. He carried no weapons because he didn't need any. Every part of his body was designed for combat. "Small human," Vextar hissed, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that Krillians used to disorient prey. "You may have defeated the metal soldier with tricks, but tricks will not save you from teeth and claws." Marcus was tired from the first fight. His left arm was probably sprained, and his armor was cracked in several places. But as he looked up at Zara in the spectator stands, he felt that familiar stubborn determination settle into his bones. "We'll see about that." Vextar attacked with the savage fury of a predator that had never known defeat. His claws raked the air where Marcus had been standing, leaving deep gouges in the arena floor. The Krillian was faster than Thulmars, but where the commander had been precise, Vextar was wild. Marcus adapted his strategy accordingly. Instead of trying to match the alien's speed, he focused on controlling space and using Vextar's aggression against him. When the Krillian lunged forward with a claw strike, Marcus sidestepped and used his staff to redirect the alien's momentum, sending him stumbling past. "Stand still and die properly," Vextar roared after his fourth failed attempt to corner Marcus. "Sorry," Marcus gasped, "but standing still was never really my strong suit." The Krillian's frustration was beginning to show. Vexitar was used to overwhelming opponents with raw ferocity, but Marcus refused to be overwhelmed. Every time the alien thought he had the human trapped, Marcus found a way to slip away, usually leaving a shallow knife cut as a calling card. The wounds weren't serious individually, but they were adding up. More importantly, they were in places that interfered with Vextar's natural fighting patterns. A cut across the palm that made gripping painful. A slice along the back of the leg that restricted extension. A nick on the neck that made turning his head uncomfortable. "You fight like a coward!" Vextar snarled, blood seeping through his natural armor at a dozen points. "I fight like someone who wants to live," Marcus replied. "Though I'll admit, the style needs work." Vextar's response was to abandon all pretense of technique and launch himself at Marcus in a berserker rage. Claws extended, teeth bared, moving fast enough to blur, Marcus had been waiting for exactly this moment. Instead of dodging away, he stepped forward into the charge, dropping low and driving his staff upward with both hands. The hardened tip of the weapon punched through the softer armor under Vextar's chin and continued upward into the alien's brain case. Vextar's momentum carried him forward, driving the staff deeper, and then he collapsed on top of Marcus in a tangle of limbs and armor. For a moment, the arena was completely silent. Then Marcus pushed the dead Krillian off his chest and struggled to his feet, still clutching his bloodied staff. "Combat concluded," the announcer's voice rang out. "Victory to Marcus Chen of the Colonial Federation. By the laws of challenge combat, all claims against Princess Zarathiel are hereby nullified." The human section of the arena exploded in cheers, but Marcus barely heard them. He was looking up at Zara, who had tears streaming down her face and was pressing her hands against the barrier as if she could reach through it to touch him. Admiral Reeves materialized beside him with a medical team. "Hell of a fight, son. How are you feeling?" "Like I just got run over by a freight hauler," Marcus admitted, accepting support from a medic. "But alive. More than alive. You just changed galactic politics forever." As the medical team worked on his injuries, Marcus watched the alien delegations filing out of the arena. The Valtheran representatives looked stunned, as if they couldn't quite believe what they'd witnessed. The Dominion delegation was arguing angrily among themselves, probably trying to figure out how to spin this loss to their superiors. But the Colonial Federation officials were smiling. They'd just gained something more valuable than territory or trade agreements. They'd gained respect. "Marcus!" He looked up to see Zara running across the arena floor, having somehow convinced the security teams to let her through. She crashed into him hard enough to nearly knock him over, wrapping her arms around him and holding on as if she'd never let go. "You magnificent, stubborn, impossible human," she whispered against his neck. "I thought I was going to lose you." "Not a chance," Marcus said, ignoring the pain in his ribs as he held her close. "I told you I was too stubborn to die." "What happens now?" she asked. Marcus looked around the arena, at the departing aliens and the celebrating humans, at Admiral Reeves, who was already fielding communication requests from a dozen species that wanted to establish formal relations with the Colonial Federation. "Now we figure out what comes next," he said. "Together." 6 months later, Marcus and Zara were married in a ceremony that was attended by representatives from 37 different species, including several that had never before acknowledged the Colonial Federation as equals. The wedding made the galactic news feeds, not because of the political implications, but because it was the first recorded case of a human winning an alien princess through trial by combat. Marcus still worked salvage operations, but now he specialized in rescue missions in hostile territory. His reputation for being too stubborn to die had spread throughout the galaxy, and he'd become something of a legend among spacers of all species. Zara established the Galactic Individual Rights Foundation, an organization dedicated to protecting sentient beings from being treated as property. Her work was funded by donations from dozens of species who had been inspired by her story, and she'd become one of the most influential voices for individual liberty in galactic politics. They lived on a small space station that Marcus had salvaged and rebuilt, orbiting a star at the intersection of colonial, Valtheran, and Dominion space. It had become an unofficial embassy for beings seeking asylum or mediation between hostile governments. "Any regrets?" Zara asked one evening as they watched ships from a dozen different species docking at their station. Marcus considered the question seriously. His life had become infinitely more complicated since that day he'd answered her distress call. He'd nearly died twice, violated countless regulations, started a small war, and ended up married to alien royalty. His quiet salvage career was definitely over. "Not even one," he said, pulling her closer as they watched the stars wheel overhead. "Though I still think your father has terrible judgment in husbands." Zara laughed, the sound still carrying those musical harmonics that made the air shimmer. "I will be sure to tell him you said so the next time he visits." "He's visiting next month. Apparently, he wishes to formally apologize and discuss establishing diplomatic relations between Valthara and the Colonial Federation." She grinned. "He is also very curious to meet the human who stole his daughter's heart and then fought 2 warriors to keep her." "Great. No pressure there." "He will like you," Zara assured him. "You are exactly the kind of stubborn, impossible person our family needs more of." Marcus looked out at the busy docking bays of their station, where humans worked alongside Valtharans, Krillians, and dozens of other species, all cooperating to build something better than what they'd had before. "You know what the best part is?" he said. "What?" "We're just getting started." In the distance, a new ship was approaching their station, broadcasting a distress signal. Marcus felt that familiar stirring of determination as he reached for his communicator. After all, someone needed to answer when people called for help. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was being too stubborn to let anyone suffer alone in the dark between the stars.